The Sony PSVR 2 is right around the corner. It launches on February 22nd. For the past couple days, I've been thinking about what this could mean for the industry, and I wanted to get my thoughts out before the tech media at large starts talking about this over the weekend. The bottom line, though, is that I think that once people get this new VR system in front of them, I think they'll be surprised how good it is, and that we'll be looking at the beginning of genuinely high-quality VR media. So, let me share some of the extremely compelling entertainment possibilities that Sony can first demonstrate and then dominate in the still infant VR market. Indeed, Sony seems to have been working intently for precisely this coming explosion in VR since the very start of PS5 development. What do I mean by that? Well, there's one feature and accessory which launched with the PS5 2 years ago that clearly points to an overarching roadmap towards a deeply immersive new kind of entertainment. That feature is Tempest audio. When the PS5 launched in November of 2020, one of the features that Sony showcased heavily was its purpose-built 3D audio engine. The Tempest engine takes the form of a discrete audio processing chip inside the PS5. But it's not a small chip. Designed in collaboration with AMD, the Tempest chip has been described as ray tracing for sound, and it's likely the most powerful audio processor ever on the consumer market. Sony's Mark Cerny, the PS5 lead system architect, gave an excellent talk on this during the lead up to the PS5 launch, which you can watch on YouTube. It's called The Road to PS5. It's a long video, but it's very good. He starts talking about the audio at the 38-minute and 25-second mark. I do recommend you go and watch that. The takeaway here is that built right into the PS5 hardware is the ability to generate the most complex, dynamic, accurate, and immersive 3D soundscape of any device in the consumer market. Now, Apple's AirPods do have spatial audio, and there are other headphones that provide spatial audio, but most of them work with systems essentially like Dolby, and there are inherent limitations to that. Dolby, for instance, can only generate positional audio from 34 different positions around you, whereas Tempest audio can generate audio from hundreds of positions, all around, up and down, above you and below you. And the difference between 34 sound sources and hundreds of sound sources is 34 is pretty immersive. Hundreds is deeply immersive, and that's really the difference that we're talking about. But audio quality is not really what PS5 is best known for. Graphics are right in front of us. They're easy to understand, at least on the surface. And a screenshot or a video clip can tell you a lot about what to expect. Sound isn't like that at all. Audio quality is every bit as important to immersion as visual quality, but it's often not given the attention that it deserves. Many times, even the end users don't give audio the chance to shine. We use cheap speakers or old headphones, or we turn it down and mostly rely on visuals and subtitles. Most of the time, we really don't even know what we're missing. After all, a good audio setup can be both expensive and intimidating. So this is the unrecognized customer desire that Sony is in a perfect position to fulfill. Deep immersion powered by audio as well as video. Follow along with me here. Truly immersive positional sound is possible using the hardware which Sony has already shipped more than 30 million units of. Games, music, and experiences that use this Sony-owned, industry-leading tech will exist most comfortably on Sony devices. And they might not be as compelling on other platforms which lack the Tempest audio chip. It's the same sort of thing as, if you don't have a DTS HD player, you can't take advantage of the DTS HD soundtrack on a Blu-ray, for instance. If you don't have the player, you can't take advantage of it. And that's how Sony essentially keeps these games and experiences in their PlayStation ecosystem. Now, a customer who owns a PS5 already can already experience this best-in-the-world 3D audio just by connecting a good pair of headphones, or of course by buying Sony's actually surprisingly affordable Pulse 3D headset. And on top of this, the PSVR 2 requires headphones. You can't, effectively at least, play it using speakers or your TV sound. You're going to need to essentially plug into headphones, either the included earbuds or your own. Now, of course, that means that the moment you plug into those headphones, you are automatically going to be in this best possible dynamic surround sound. using Tempest audio. You don't have any other choice. You are going to be in this outstanding audio environment. Sony-led PS5 and PSVR 2 games and experiences are all going to be developed with this audio tech in mind. They're going to fully leverage it and probably create some of the most immersive virtual soundscapes ever experienced so far. Now, of course, there's going to be a dividing line between first-party games that take full advantage of Tempest audio and third-party or multi-platform games that are not going to fully leverage it because, well, that system isn't available on other platforms. And if you design deeply for it, then you're going to have to do twice the work as you design also for, just a conventional Dolby system. So the Sony-led properties and the games published by Sony Studios are going to sound noticeably different than the ones not. Now, Sony also makes use of its own 3D audio system for its music business. It's a natural progression to bring that into PSVR 2, and perhaps in the form of concerts or recording sessions. And I'm not talking about virtual ones, rather an audio-forward 3D concert video. The sort of thing where the user can look around but not necessarily move much outside of a certain headbox. And all of this with truly exceptional sound that seems like it's coming from exactly the right place, the musician's instruments and the speakers. Yeah, I know it sounds like I'm just kind of on the hype train over here. I do get it. And in fairness, I'm a bit of an audio nerd, so I genuinely am excited about these possibilities. But I also think that I'm right. Sony really does know audio. And it seems to me that they consider audio to be a critical feature for the upcoming PSVR 2 and PS5 in general. Now, not least because the folks that have actually received review units of the PSVR 2 actually report that Sony's own Pulse 3D headsets fit perfectly over the VR headsets. So let's shift gears here a bit, though, and discuss the visual side of things. I'm going to keep referencing audio integration, though, since it is a key part of the whole experience. So VR has always been, a little bit janky. It's just a bit too unnatural, a little laggy, a little low res, just a bit off. That's starting to change, but that is essentially what we've had to kind of deal with. I don't think that the upcoming PSVR 2 will put an end to that, but I think that it will give customers from time to time and moment to moment their first ever truly immersive, forget that you're in a simulation kind of experience. That's not going to be what it's like all the time, but I think just about everyone that puts on a PSVR 2 and plays a well-designed experience in it will have the ability to actually be transported somewhere else in a way that they weren't expecting. I think it'll be a lot more real than people are necessarily prepared for. So why do I think this, though? Because in a appropriately scaled simulated environment, the Sony product will actually be able to provide essentially photoreal visuals and do it with seamless, convincing soundscapes. It will be able to fool the senses. So some PC VR users have already been able to experience this, notably in flight or racing simulators. And those gamers are convinced. But let's face it, no one really listens to them because they're PC VR users. And anyway, they still aren't getting the best sound because it's not as good as a PS5 can provide. So I bring this up because one of the day one titles for PSVR 2 is Gran Turismo 7. It's a racing game, as you probably know, which was reportedly developed from the ground up for VR on the PlayStation. You take a quick look around the net and you'll find that the few people who have been able to play this on the PSVR 2 are generally blown away by the experience, to the point that many of them struggle to describe it. They say that you need to experience it yourself. And honestly, that's high praise. I think the defining products for Sony will be its own first-party games and experiences, at least for a while. The rest of the industry is still grappling with how to make compelling VR media, and truly VR-only experiences are still rare because it's a relatively small customer base. I expect that 2023 will be the year that begins to change. But development takes time, and I do suspect that Sony and their in-house developers will be miles ahead of the field, probably until mid-2024. There's some possible exceptions, though. The metaverse. So I hope that Sony takes a proactive approach to curating a large library of experiences developed by outside companies. I already mentioned concerts and music videos, but there are actually many more possible experiences or destinations that the power of the PS5 can unlock. Sony's new headset seems to have the resolution, field of view, sound, speed, comfort, and even affordability, because honestly, when you look at its capabilities, it is affordable compared to what it gives you. That's required to actually enable some of the metaverse hype that we've all been suffering through this last year and a half. And since they're an entertainment company, hopefully they'll create a collection that is actually entertaining, or at least fascinating. So let's discuss some of the VR media that I think Sony is best positioned to dominate in the next year. These might not be what you expect, so do keep an open mind. So meditation and mindfulness. If you have seen some of the tech demos for Unreal Engine 5.1 and Nanite, then you know that rich, detailed, photoreal environments are here already. You could drop a user into what looks and sounds like a clearing in a rainforest with birds swooping overhead, insects chirping and chittering, and like monkeys moving in the distance. All these just things. Sony's advanced audio could absolutely make the difference for something like this. But just as important is the wide FOV to fill in some of the peripheral vision and the use of foveated rendering to enhance detail. If something like this is done well enough, customers will pay a surprising amount to sit in their own little corner of the jungle and relax while they try and avoid existential climate dread. And the same thing applies to any environment that you can think of, forest, a beach, desert, like a quiet room, anything in the world. But a crude example that has already been announced and which you can kind of see some videos of to give you sort of an idea of what could be possible is called Kayak VR. And it's not designed specifically for the PSVR 2, so it doesn't really take advantage of the full power there, but it's an interesting way to see what some people are already working on in this direction. But another possibility is things like fantastic or trippy kind of environments. Something like Meow Wolf, which actually CNET recently wrote an article about a new Meow Wolf installation in Las Vegas and compared it to some of the things we've been hearing about the metaverse. And if you've ever been to Meow Wolf, you know that it's, in a way, it's almost like a real-world version of the game Myst, where you have these little kind of puzzles and details everywhere that each, as you uncover them, provide a little bit more information and a little bit more kind of world building. And it's the sort of place where it's interesting just to sit and enjoy the space. And that's the sort of thing that can actually translate quite well into a powerful enough VR headset. And that's something that I think that Sony should attempt to work on. So what I mean by this is when you remove some of the gameplay hustle and simply explore a well-crafted environment, you can reach parts of the mind that we don't really think about much with video games. Things like creativity, curiosity, awe even. Convincing high-quality VR could be used for some deeply moving or humbling experiences. And I think the last thing that I'll touch on here is digital twins of real spaces or objects. And this is going to become a huge market in the next few years. The possibilities here are essentially endless, but I'll focus on one: museums. Probably not what you were expecting, right? Museums have, for a long time been in the process of digitizing their collections, but sensor technology and camera technology has moved so quickly that they'll really need to start over again to be VR ready. So companies like Autodesk and Matterport are building systems to scan places and objects in rich detail so that they can be represented digitally. But who would actually want to look at them digitally? Well, it's the same people that would go to museums. After all, you can't actually touch the thing behind the glass anyway when you're in the museum, and in VR, you can spin it around, you can zoom closer, you can have the description read aloud to you, you can access more detailed notes about the piece. And there's no crowd to jostle you, there's no cafe to get ripped off in, and it could be any collection, anywhere, no plane ticket required. I mean, I'd pay $20 for a 24-hour pass to go to the digital MoMA. All three of those examples are not really what you think of first when you hear PlayStation. And I don't know precisely how Sony intends to try and take market share in these new areas. But when the PSVR 2 launches on February 22nd, I think that they'll have the most compelling hardware with which to access these never-before-seen products. At least until Apple has its say. Now, a very brief word on competing products. I think that Microsoft's Xbox will look very much behind the moment if they don't announce a relatively affordable VR system in the next couple quarters. However, they may be able to integrate some VR headsets into the Xbox, as they already have to some degree with the Quest 2. But until they find an answer to the deep integration, outstanding audio, and foveated rendering of Sony's system, they'll be on the back foot. Apple will probably announce something very cool, but who knows when and who knows for how much. Meta, their Quest Pro and the like really can't compete in games, or most game engine-based applications. However, Meta may become a strong competitor in the non-game experience space. They're putting particular emphasis on things like digital twins. Now, PC users have valid options like the HTC Vive Pro 2, what a name, but they're more expensive and frustrating than the PSVR 2, and, at least for the moment, are really not any better. So for now, Sony has the ball in VR. Let's see where they go with it. Thanks for watching. This was my first video, but I'll be adding some more in a little while. And if you felt like I respected your time and intelligence and attention, then maybe subscribe. Thanks.